Hi, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our RBT practice exam series where we're going through the next set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Santa Claus is out delivering presents. He enters through the chimney, puts the presents under the tree, and then eats the cookies left out for him. Santa continues until he has hit all the houses. The cookies represent blank relative to Santa delivering presents. Question is asking about the cookies, and they're asking specifically about the cookies relative to Santa delivering presents. So, what do we know about the cookies in the context of Santa delivering presents? Well, when Santa is out delivering presents, he goes in through the chimney, he puts the presents under the tree, and then he eats the cookies. So if we look at this as ABC, our antecedent is going through the chimney, the behavior is putting the presents under the tree, and the consequence is he gets the cookies. Now, what effect are the cookies having on Santa's behavior? Well, after he eats the cookies, he continues until he has hit all the houses. So his behavior is maintaining at worst and increasing at best. So when we have a consequence that is increasing or maintaining a behavior, in this case, delivering presents or putting presents under the tree, what do we consider that? We consider it reinforcement. When Santa puts the presents under the tree, he gets the cookies. And so he's doing this at all the houses because when he puts them under the tree, he gets to eat cookies. So cookies representing reinforcement. Now, is it positive or negative? Well, Santa eats the cookies, so he's getting the cookies. Therefore, it's adding to the environment. It's going to be positive. So the cookies are representing positive reinforcement relative to Santa delivering presents. It's not punishment. Punishment would be if Santa delivered the presents, ate the cookies, and then stopped delivering the presents. Punishment decreases future behavior. In this case, the cookies are maintaining, again, at worst, increasing at best. And that's what reinforcement does, either maintains or increases future behavior. So the cookies being added are considered positive reinforcement relative to Santa delivering presents. Clark is outside hanging lights on his house. Clark estimates that he has about 1,000 lights to hang and about 5 hours to do it. Now, what rate will Clark need to hang the lights in order to finish his task? So we have a rate question. And what is rate? Rate is a continuous measurement procedure where we take frequency and we divide it by time, and then we get a per amount. What do we mean by a per amount? Well, when you have a frequency, let's just say 5, in an amount of time, let's say 1 hour, that would be 5 per hour. So you have to look at your frequency and your time, and then all you do is take your frequency and divide it. So in our case, we need to know at what rate does Clark need to hang lights to finish his task. So how many lights does Clark have? That's going to be our frequency. Clark has 1,000 lights. That's our count. Now we need our time. What is our time? Well, our time is 5 hours. And so in order to find rate, we need to put 1,000 over 5 and divide. So what do we get? 100 lights per hour. If Clark hangs 100 lights per hour, that's only going to be 500 lights in 5 hours. He has 1,000 lights. Not going to work. B, 1,000 lights per hour. Now, 1,000 lights per hour will be excellent, but does that equal our rate? It doesn't, because he has 5 hours to do it. In order to calculate rate, we're going to put the 1,000 over the 5. And so when we put 1,000 over 5 and calculate our rate, we get 200 lights per hour. Obviously, if Clark hung 1,000 lights per hour, he'd be finished way ahead of time. But since they're asking for rate, you need to calculate the exact rate, which again is 1,000 over 5, which gives you 200 lights per hour. 200 lights is simply a frequency. If you have rate, you also need the time component. That's what separates frequency from rate. 200 lights is simply a count. When you say 200 lights per hour, now you have an actual rate. So at what rate will Clark need to hang the lights in order to finish his task? The best answer is C, 200 lights per hour. Lauren tells all her children that they better watch out, they better not cry, and they better not pout because Santa Claus is coming to town, and if they cry or pout, they won't get presents. Lauren is doing what? So Lauren is using an old Christmas song to tell her kids what they need to do. She says, you need to watch out, you need to not cry, and you need to not pout. Why? Because if they do cry or pout, they won't get presents. So let's look at this another way. If you cry or pout, then you won't get presents. When we use if then statements, what do we call that? Well, we call that a contingency, and you're setting up contingencies all the time. First, you do this, then this happens. If you do this, then this happens. Lauren is simply establishing a contingency. If you cry or pout, then you won't get presents. So A looks pretty good, establishing a contingency. Is Lauren teaching verbal behavior? Well, not in this scenario. There is no example of Lauren teaching her children communication or verbal behavior. Is she shaping? Are we dealing with approximations here? We are not. Anytime shaping comes up, first thing you want to do is look for approximations. Do you have approximations? We don't have behavior approximations. We don't have shaping here. And then D, using negative reinforcement. Is Lauren removing anything in order to increase behavior? Well, no. If anything, we had to pick, we'd say Lauren's attempting to punish because if the kids cry or pout, then she will remove their presents or she's not going to give them their presents, which won't be negative reinforcement because she'd be trying to decrease the crying or pouting. So Lauren is simply establishing a contingency, an if then statement indicating if something happens, then this will happen. If you cry or pout, then you won't get presents. Ms. Nori is playing a Christmas themed game with her classroom. Each time the class answers 3 questions correctly, she awards them a stocking. The more stockings they have at the end of the game, the more free time they get at the end of the day. What type of reinforcement schedule is represented? We have a reinforcement schedule question. What are our basic schedules? We have fixed ratios, fixed intervals, variable ratios, and variable intervals. Now, let's start with, is it a ratio or an interval? With a ratio, we're looking at a certain number of responses. With an interval, we're looking at an amount of time. So are the class or the kids in the class dependent on amount of responses, a number of responses, or time? Well, it's responses, right? Because they need to answer 3 questions. So it's all based on responses. So we have a ratio schedule. Now we ask ourselves, is it fixed or is it variable? Well, fixed means it's not changing. So it's consistently going to be 3 questions. Variable means it could change or it's an average. In this case, each time, so every time the class answers 3 questions correctly, they get a stocking. Is the 3-question requirement changing? It's not. Each time they answer 3 questions, they get rewarded. That is fixed. So what type of reinforcement schedule is represented? Well, A, fixed ratio. Not a fixed interval, even though it is fixed because we're dealing with responses, not time. And we know it's not C or D because we don't have a variable schedule. We have a fixed schedule based on responses, making this a fixed ratio. Theodore has all but mastered a task analysis aimed at Theodore's ability to get ready for bed at night without help. Although Theodore can do his routine mostly independently and has mastered the essential steps, if something changes during his routine, Theodore will struggle to complete the routine. What strategy would be best to help with Theodore's problem? All right, this is a task analysis, task chaining question, and it's a more difficult question because we're dealing with something we don't often discuss as technicians with task analyses and task chaining. What are we talking about here? Well, we want to know a strategy to help with Theodore's problem. So what do we know about Theodore? Well, he's basically mastered his task analysis for getting ready for bed. And although he does it mostly independently, and he has the essential steps mastered, if something changes, he struggles. So think about that for a second. He's all but mastered the analyses. He can do the essential steps. We want him to do it without help. He does it mostly independently. But if the chain changes or his routine changes, he has difficulty. Now that's a problem. That's a common problem with task analyses because with task analyses, we're creating a task chain and we're teaching that task chain over and over again. But we want to be prepared for if that task chain isn't always the same, because we know in real life, things are always constantly changing. So in this case, we need to help Theodore when things do change. So what strategy is best? A, forward chaining. With forward chaining, we'd be starting at the beginning with step one. But Theodore has already basically mastered the analyses. So forward chaining doesn't seem like the most effective or efficient way to help with Theodore's problem. Theodore's problem is not the fact he can't do the chain, it's that he can't do the chain when the routine does change. What about functional communication training? We don't want to teach Theodore to ask for help or ask for a break. We want him to do it without help. But functional communication training doesn't seem consistent with our goal. What about total task chaining? So total task chaining is better than forward chaining, because at least with total task chaining, we're teaching the steps he doesn't know. But that still doesn't help with the fact that if the steps change, he struggles. So to address the issue of the steps changing leading to Theodore struggling, we're going to want to use a behavior chain interruption strategy, which is exactly what it sounds like. At some point in the chain, we interrupt that chain and get the learner to engage in a different, sometimes untaught response. So, in order to help Theodore conquer this issue of struggling when things change, we need to intentionally interrupt the chain and get Theodore to start acting differently and reacting when things don't go perfectly. So, what strategy would be best? A behavior chain interruption strategy. And then, which of the following could be used to describe an antecedent strategy or is considered an antecedent strategy? So, kind of two questions here. We're either describing an antecedent strategy or considering something as an antecedent strategy. So, A, proactive. Is an antecedent strategy proactive? It is. When you do an antecedent strategy, you're not reacting to anything, you're being proactive. So, at the same time, you're being preventative. So when you use an antecedent strategy, you're being proactive, you're taking proactive steps to prevent something, and you're being preventative in nature. Now, non contingent reinforcement. Is non contingent reinforcement considered an antecedent strategy? It is, because it comes before the response. So, which one of these describe antecedent strategies? Well, proactive and preventative. Which one is an antecedent strategy? Well, non contingent reinforcement. So, our answer here is D, all the above. All right. Thank you for watching. Check out btexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everyone. Have a great, great holiday weekend. As always, subscribe if you haven't already. Work hard, study hard. Let us know when you pass, and we will see you soon.